On the 23rd of January, protests broke out all across Russia. They were held in 198 towns and cities in what were the largest anti-government demonstrations since 2011-2013, with a turnout of at least 40,000 people in Moscow alone. The initial response to the unrest by the Russian authorities was forceful. 4,000 people reported to be detained across Russia. In some Russian cities, there were internet and mobile phone network outages. Communication issues were reported in major cities, and targeted lockdowns, coordinated propaganda, journalist intimidation, and the reintroduction of anti-protest laws that punish peaceful assembly with prison terms have been implemented to stop further unrest. They are nicknamed the Navalny protests, as their timing coincides with Alexei Navalny's dramatic return to the country after a long recuperation period from poisoning. Navalny is a Russian opposition leader, politician, lawyer, and anti-corruption activist, effectively seen as Putin's opponent and as someone who is standing up against corruption in Russia. He wields a strong media presence with 6 million YouTube subscribers and more than 2 million Twitter followers. There, he publishes materials about corruption in Russia, organizes political demonstrations, and promotes his campaigns. Therefore, he was the spark that set off the protests. But the people did not gather just for him, but rather to protest against the direction Russia has been heading the last 2 decades. Here are the 5 factors fueling the protests. In the mid-1990s, following the fall of the Soviet Union, Russia really was a free country. Almost like a Wild West, some would say, where you could say and do whatever you wanted. But in the past 2 decades, Putin has passed legislation limiting the freedom to protest, dismantling independent media, and increasing censorship online and in the education system. Russians are not naive, and they realize that the situation is dire and in need of change. Standing up for the right to free speech is at the forefront of the minds of Russians. On January 19th, a YouTube video purported to reveal Vladimir Putin's 1.4 billion Black Sea palace. The slickly produced clip takes viewers through extensive drone footage of the grounds, detailing the complex's layout and furnishings. It is narrated by Navalny himself and has over 110 million views. It was designed to provoke outrage amongst the public and chip away at the president's image, portraying him as somewhat of a despot. Putin has consistently denied any connection to the palace, and his former judo sparring partner has since stepped forward and claimed ownership. Living standards plummeted in 2015 and 2016 as the Russian economy suffered from sanctions imposed in the aftermath of the Ukrainian war. According to Rosstat, disposable incomes fell over 2% year-on-year in 2015 and over 4% in 2016. There was no recovery to speak of over the next 3 years, and more recently in 2020, they fell another 3.5% amidst COVID-19. Russia's GDP currently stands 30% lower than it was in 2013, and Russia also happens to be one of the least equal countries in the world, with an immense wealth gap. COVID-19. Putin was amongst those world leaders who downplayed the COVID pandemic in the early days and was eager to declare a premature victory. This left him politically vulnerable when cases started skyrocketing in late spring and the summer. The incorrect portrayal of COVID-19, not dissimilar to other presidents, and the overall dissatisfaction with the Kremlin's public health response lowered Putin's approval ratings. There have also been 2 notable political disputes that have devolved into popular protests in recent years. The first concerns pension reform. Protests erupted in 2018 following an announcement by the government that the pension age would be raised, and protests continued up until 2019 after the law was passed. Another more recent outburst happened when Sergei Furgal ended up winning the governorship in Khabarovsk. He was subsequently removed due to murder allegations, triggering protests in support of him throughout Russia's far eastern territories. The new governor was a figure not unlike Navalny, perceived to be someone opposed to Putin. The Far East united in its plea to gain more autonomy from Moscow. Overall, the combination of falling living standards and growing anti-elite sentiment are behind Russia's recent protests, not a widespread affinity to the figure of Alexei Navalny, as is often portrayed by media coverage. If the protests do manage to reach critical mass and elicit some kind of political change in the country, which is a very big if as Vladimir Putin remains quite popular, then it is unlikely to bring about a real post-Putin future. The president is more likely to retreat behind the scenes and will likely remain the puppet master. And officially the protests have been called off. But of course, nothing has changed, and we will likely be seeing more unrest very soon.